Somewhere out there, across the cold silence of space, alien commanders are learning one terrifying truth. Never underestimate a Deathworlder. Welcome to HFY Deathworld Stories, where humanity shows the galaxy what we're made of. Wars, warships, alien encounters, raw human fire.
The emergency lights bathed the diplomatic chamber in red as Ambassador David Lee reviewed the same message for the third time. His hands did not shake, though perhaps they should have. The Ralnathi Consortium had just demanded that humanity abandon 12 mining colonies in the Epsilon sector within 30 days, and the tone of their communication left no room for negotiation. David had been Earth's voice in the Galactic Assembly for 6 years now. He had negotiated trade agreements, settled territorial disputes, and built bridges between species that had never trusted each other. But the Ralnathi were different. They were aggressive, territorial, and they had been pushing boundaries across the galaxy for decades. Smaller species bent to their will. Larger species found it easier to give them what they wanted than fight. Now they wanted human territory. The assembly chamber felt colder than usual when David entered. Representatives from 47 species filled the curved rows of seats, their various forms creating a bizarre gallery of galactic life. The Falari delegates sat in their specialized low-gravity seats, their insectoid bodies clicking softly. The massive Drellian representatives occupied water-filled chambers, their aquatic forms drifting peacefully. And at the far end, the Ralnathi contingent waited with barely concealed satisfaction. Delegate Sorn, the Ralnathi speaker, rose from his seat. His reptilian features twisted into what David had learned to recognize as a smile. It was not friendly. "The human delegation will respond to our territorial claim," Sorn announced to the chamber. His voice carried the confidence of someone who had already won. David stood slowly, adjusting his plain gray suit. Around him, representatives from other species leaned forward. Many had been watching humanity closely since Earth joined the Assembly 8 years ago. Most were curious. Some were concerned. Earth was classified as a Class 9 death world, one of the most hostile environments known to produce intelligent life. The fact that humans had evolved there made them an oddity. But oddities could be dangerous. The Epsilon sector colonies represent the homes of over 200,000 human citizens, David began, his voice steady. These are families, communities, lives built over a decade of hard work. We request formal mediation through the Assembly's dispute resolution process. Sorn's laugh echoed through the chamber. Mediation? We are offering you mercy, human. Your species is fortunate we allow you 30 days. Other species have been given less. Then let us discuss terms, David continued, ignoring the insult. We propose shared mining operations. The resources are abundant enough for both our peoples. We can establish profit-sharing agreements, joint security patrols, and cooperative development. The chamber erupted in whispers. It was a generous offer, more generous than most species would make under threat. David could see the surprise on many faces, but on the Ralnathi delegation he saw only contempt. "We do not share," Sorn declared. "We take what is ours by right of superior force. You have 30 days, human. After that, our warships will enforce our claim." David felt the weight of every eye in the chamber. This was the moment that mattered. How he responded now would define how the galaxy saw humanity for years to come. "We reject your claim," he said quietly. "The colonies will remain under human sovereignty. We will defend them if necessary." Sorn's smile widened. "Defend them? With what? Your species has been in space for barely half a century. You have no military tradition in the stars. You negotiate, you compromise, you bend. We have watched you. You are weak." The whispers grew louder. David could hear the translations being muttered across the chamber. "The Deathworlders are backing down. They talk tough but have no spine. Typical all muscle, no courage." David gathered his papers slowly, deliberately. "We have offered peace. We have offered compromise. If you choose to reject both, the consequences will be yours to bear." He left the chamber without waiting for dismissal. Behind him, he could hear Sorn addressing the assembly, declaring victory, mocking human cowardice. Let him talk. Words were cheap in the galaxy. Actions were what mattered. In his private quarters on Station Harmony, David composed an encrypted message to Earth. His fingers moved across the holographic keyboard with practiced efficiency. The message was brief, coded in a system only Earth's military command would recognize. Diplomacy has failed. Authorization Protocol 7. On Earth, in the Orbital Defense Command Station high above the Pacific Ocean, Admiral Rebecca Cole read the message 3 times. Around her, the command center hummed with the quiet efficiency of a military. Installation. Officers monitored sensor arrays, tracked ship movements, and maintained the defensive perimeter that had protected Earth since the first contact with alien life. Cole had been preparing for this moment since she took command 5 years ago, not hoping for it but preparing, because she had read the histories of every species in the galaxy. She had studied their wars, their conquests, their defeats, and she had learned one crucial lesson that shaped everything Earth's military did. Peace was a choice, but you could only choose peace if you were strong enough to enforce it. Status of the fleet, she ordered, her voice cutting through the background noise. All 15 capital ships are at full readiness, her tactical officer reported. HDSF Tenacity, Relentless, Dauntless, and the rest of the fleet are awaiting orders. Marine complements are at 98% strength. Weapons systems are optimal. And the Epsilon sector. Ralnathi fleet has 40 warships surrounding our colonies. They are holding position, waiting for our response. Cole studied the tactical display, 40 ships against 15. The Ralnathi thought they had overwhelming advantage. They were wrong. Prepare the fleet for immediate deployment, Cole commanded. Full combat loadout, all crews to battle stations. Her executive officer hesitated. Admiral, the Ralnathi outnumber us more than 2 to 1. Cole looked at him and her expression was cold steel. Commander, the Ralnathi have never fought humans before. They have no idea what they're facing. Send the order. Across Earth's orbital space, warships came alive. The HDSF Tenacity, Cole's flagship, powered up its reactors. The crew moved with practiced precision, each member knowing their role. These were humans, born on a world that had tried to kill their ancestors for millions of years. They were the products of evolution's harshest classroom. And now the galaxy was about to learn what that meant. The viewscreen in mining station Persephone's control room displayed a sight that made Linda Gray's stomach tighten. 40 Ralnathi warships hung in the darkness of space like predators circling wounded prey. Their hulls gleamed under the distant sun, weapons arrays visible even from this distance. Linda had been station chief for 3 years. She had managed equipment failures, resolved disputes between mining crews, and once talked down a man, threatening to blow an airlock, but she had never faced an invasion fleet before. How long until they move on us? She asked her security chief. Tom Bradford checked his console. Unknown, Chief. They are just sitting there waiting. Maybe they expect us to run. We're not running, Linda said firmly. This is our home. The station housed 200 souls, mostly mining engineers and their families. Below them, in the asteroid belt, automated systems continued pulling rare metals from the rocks, oblivious to the threat above. This sector had been humanity's for a decade, claimed legally through the Assembly's colonial charter. The Ralnathi did not care about legality. On the bridge of the Ralnathi flagship, Commander Drath examined the human mining station with mild interest. It was small, poorly defended, and utterly insignificant from a military perspective. One shot from his lightest weapons would crack it open like an egg. No response from the human government? He asked his communications officer. None, Commander. Their ambassador left the assembly station 2 days ago. No official statement has been issued. Drath nodded, satisfied. The humans were doing what they always did, talking, delaying, hoping the problem would resolve itself. He had studied their brief history in the galaxy. They negotiated constantly. They avoided conflict. They bent to pressure. They were exactly like every other weak species. The Ralnathi had dominated. Maintain position, Drath ordered. When the deadline expires in 48 hours, we will take the station. Minimal casualties if possible. We are not monsters. His tactical officer looked up from her screen, concern flickering across her features. Commander, we are detecting hyperspace signatures at the system's edge. Drath felt a brief moment of irritation. Reinforcements for the mining station. How many transport ships are the humans sending to evacuate? Negative, Commander. These are not transports. I count 15 vessels, military configuration. They are human warships. The bridge fell silent. Drath stared at the tactical display as 15 red icons appeared at the edge of the Epsilon sector. 15 ships against his 40. The humans were either incredibly brave or incredibly stupid. 15 ships, Drath repeated. They send 15 ships against our fleet. Confirmed, Commander. HDSF Tenacity is the lead vessel, followed by 14 other capital ships. They are moving toward our position. Drath felt something close to pity. The humans had made a terrible mistake. They should have negotiated, should have accepted his generous terms. Now they would learn a painful lesson about military power. All ships to combat readiness, he ordered. Prepare to disable the human fleet. We will show them mercy they do not deserve. Aboard the HDSF Tenacity, Admiral Rebecca Cole watched the Ralnathi fleet with the detached interest of a chess player studying an opponent's opening move. They had positioned themselves in a standard defensive formation, textbook tactics straight from any military academy in the galaxy. They have not changed position since we arrived, her tactical officer reported. Why would they? Cole replied. They think they have already won 40 ships against 15, simple mathematics. We could still withdraw, Admiral, open new negotiations. Cole shook her head. We gave them every chance to negotiate. They chose violence. Now we end this quickly and permanently. She activated the fleet-wide communication channel. Every human ship would hear her words, every crew member preparing for battle. All ships, this is Admiral Cole. You know our mission. The Ralnathi threatened our people, attacked our colonies, and rejected every peaceful solution. We tried patience. We tried diplomacy. They mistook both for weakness. Today we teach them the difference between restraint and inability. Rules of engagement: disable their vessels, minimize casualties, protect the mining station. Show them that humanity chooses peace but can wage war. Cole out. The human fleet accelerated. Not the gentle acceleration of civilian vessels, but the brutal thrust of warships designed for combat. 8 gravities of sustained force pressed crews into their acceleration couches. Inside the ships, humans endured pressure that would kill most galactic species. On the Ralnathi flagship, alarms began shrieking. Commander, the human ships are accelerating at 8 standard gravities, the helm officer shouted. That's impossible, Drath said. No crew can function at that acceleration. Their people will be unconscious. Their formation is holding, Commander. They are not slowing down. Drath stared at the tactical display. The human ships were moving faster than any vessels he had ever encountered. They were not drifting like cargo ships, they were diving like atmospheric fighters, aggressive and precise. All weapons target the lead ship, he ordered. Fire when in range. The Ralnathi fleet opened fire with their plasma batteries. Bolts of superheated energy streaked across space, brilliant against the darkness. The shots were accurate, professionally executed. They should have destroyed the lead human ship. The HDSF Tenacity rolled sideways, dodging the plasma fire with impossible agility. The bolts passed harmlessly through the space where it had been milliseconds before. The other human ships scattered like a school of fish evading a predator, each moving independently, each avoiding the incoming fire. How are they maneuvering like that? Drath demanded. His tactical officer looked terrified. Commander, their pilots are pulling maneuvers that should render them unconscious. 6 gravity turns, 8 gravity acceleration, sustained high G burns. No known species can withstand that. Then they must be using automation, Drath insisted. Negative, sir. We are detecting life signs. They have living crews. The human ships closed to optimal range, and their weapons spoke. But they did not fire plasma or particle beams like civilized species. They fired tungsten carbide slugs accelerated to 3% of light speed. Railgun rounds, primitive kinetic weapons that the galaxy had abandoned centuries ago. The first Ralnathi cruiser took a direct hit. The slug punched through shields designed to deflect energy weapons, through armor plating, through the hull. The ship spun out of control, engines dead, life support failing. The second ship died 6 seconds later. The third and fourth followed within a minute. Drath watched his fleet being systematically destroyed by an enemy that should not exist. Across the galaxy, on the scientific observation vessel Curiosity, Dr. Trill watched the battle unfold with a mixture of horror and fascination. The Falari scientist had been studying humanity for 2 years, observing their behavior, cataloging their oddities. But nothing in his research had prepared him for this. The tactical displays showed a massacre disguised as military engagement. The human fleet moved through the Ralnathi formation like surgeons wielding scalpels. Each strike was precise, calculated to disable rather than destroy. Ships lost engines, weapons, or life support, but they remained intact. Crews survived. "They are holding back," Trill whispered to his research partner. "Even now, they are minimizing casualties." "But they are winning," his partner replied. 40 ships against 15, and the humans are winning." On the Ralnathi flagship, panic had replaced confidence. Half of Drath's fleet was disabled, spinning helplessly in space. The other half was attempting to retreat, but human ships were faster, more maneuverable. There was no escape. "All weapons, concentrate fire on Sector 7, Drath ordered desperately. "If we focus our entire fleet on a single target, we can overwhelm their defenses." 20 Ralnathi ships turned their weapons on the HDSF Dauntless. Plasma bolts converged from multiple angles, a coordinated strike that should have vaporized any vessel. The Dauntless took the hit. Shields flared, systems overloaded, but the ship held. "Target their weapons," Admiral Cole ordered calmly. "Disable but do not destroy." The human fleet responded with surgical precision. Railgun rounds struck the Ralnathi ship's weapons arrays, turning sophisticated plasma cannons into scrap metal. Within minutes, 20 ships went from combat vessels to floating debris. Drath made a decision born of desperation and rage. If he could not win, he would make the humans pay a price. He would destroy what they came to protect. "Target mining station Persephone," he commanded. "All remaining ships fire everything." His crew hesitated. Targeting civilians violated every rule of warfare, but Drath was beyond rules now. The HDSF Relentless, a human frigate, detected the targeting lock immediately. Its captain, James Rodriguez, did not hesitate. He knew what the Ralnathi were planning, and he knew what he had to do. "Helm, position us between the station and the Ralnathi flagship," Rodriguez ordered. "Captain, we will take the full force of their attack," his executive officer protested. "I know, do it anyway." The Relentless moved with desperate speed, placing itself directly in the path of the incoming fire. Plasma bolts designed to destroy a mining station struck the frigate instead. Shields collapsed instantly. The hull breached in a dozen places. 15 crew members died in the first second. 40 more were injured. But the station survived. "Rodriguez, fall back," Admiral Cole's voice cut through the chaos. "Negative, Admiral," Rodriguez replied through gritted teeth. "We have fight left." And, somehow impossibly, the Relentless stayed in the battle. Damage control teams worked miracles, rerouting power, sealing breaches, keeping weapons online. The ship was dying, but it would die fighting. Admiral Cole felt something cold settle in her chest. This was the moment where war became real, where theory met reality. She had trained for this, prepared for this, but nothing made it easier. "All ships protect the Relentless," she ordered. "End this now." The human fleet descended on the Ralnathi flagship like wolves on wounded prey. Railgun fire systematically destroyed every weapon, every engine, every system that allowed the ship to fight or flee. Within minutes, Drath's flagship was dead in space. Cole opened a channel to the Ralnathi commander. His face appeared on her screen, scales pale with shock. "Commander Drath," she said quietly. "Surrender your fleet. Your crews will be treated according to galactic convention. You have my word." Drath stared at her. Around him, his bridge was in chaos. Alarms wailed, crew members shouted damage reports, and through the viewports, he could see his fleet destroyed, disabled, defeated. "What are you?" he asked finally. "We are what happens when a world does not forgive mistakes," Cole replied. "We evolved where weakness meant death. We learned to be strong, but we also learned when strength alone is not enough. We learned cooperation, sacrifice, and mercy. Surrender, Commander. There has been enough death today." Drath looked at his tactical display. Every ship in his fleet was disabled or destroyed. The humans had won, but they had not committed genocide. They could have annihilated his fleet, but they chose restraint. "We surrender," he said. Across the galaxy, species watched the recordings with growing unease. The battle had lasted 27 minutes, 40 Ralnathi warships disabled by 15 human vessels, and the casualty count told a story that many found difficult to believe. "Human casualties," 23 dead, 67 injured. Relnathi casualties, 8 dead, over 2,000 injured. The humans had won decisively, while minimizing deaths on both sides. On Station Harmony, the Galactic Assembly convened an emergency session. Ambassador David Lee stood at the human podium, facing a chamber full of species who had mocked his people as weak, cowardly, and spineless. "We did not seek this conflict," David began. "We exhausted every diplomatic option. We offered compromise, cooperation, and peace. When those were rejected and our people were threatened, we responded. But even in war, we maintained our principles. We disabled, we did not destroy. We protected, we did not annihilate." The chamber was silent. The Falari delegation began a slow clicking that others recognized as their version of applause. The Drellian cooperative followed. Within moments, half the assembly was honoring humanity's restraint. But in the shadows, other species whispered different concerns. The Deathworlders had revealed their true nature. They were not weak. They were patient, and patient predators were the most dangerous kind. In the medical bay of the HDSF Relentless, Captain Rodriguez lay in a regeneration pod. Admiral Cole stood beside him, looking at the man who had sacrificed his ship to save civilians. "You saved 200 lives today," she said softly. Rodriguez opened his eyes. "Just doing what Deathworlders do, Admiral. We protect our pack." Cole smiled sadly. "Yes, we do." Outside the window, Earth hung in the distance, blue and beautiful and deadly. The world that had forged humanity into what they were. Strong enough to fight, wise enough to choose peace, and brave enough to protect the weak. The galaxy would never see them the same way again. 6 weeks after the battle, humanity discovered that winning a war was simpler than winning the peace. Trade routes shifted away from human space. Diplomatic meetings grew tense. And in the shadows of the Galactic Assembly, a new threat emerged. High Minister Kren of the Haldren Dominion watched the battle recordings for the 5th time. Unlike the other species, he did not react with fear or respect. He reacted with calculation. The Haldren were not warriors, they were politicians. They understood that power came in many forms and military strength was only one piece on the board. "The humans are dangerous," his advisor commented. "No," Kren corrected. "The humans are powerful. There is a difference. Dangerous implies chaos. These Deathworlders are controlled, disciplined, predictable. That makes them manageable." "How do we manage a species that can destroy 40 warships with 15? Kren smiled, his amphibian features creasing. "We do not fight them militarily. We isolate them politically, make the galaxy fear them, make them pariahs. Then they will be forced to accept our terms simply to rejoin galactic society." The plan was elegant in its simplicity. The Haldren proposed a galactic safety accord to the Assembly, a series of restrictions on military buildups and mandatory weapons inspections. On the surface, it seemed reasonable, designed to prevent future conflicts. In reality, it specifically targeted human advantages while giving the Haldren inspection authority over signatory species. Ambassador David Lee recognized the trap immediately. "This accord is not about safety," he told the human delegation in a private meeting. "It is about control. If we sign it, we surrender our ability to defend ourselves. If we refuse, we confirm their propaganda that we are aggressive warmongers." "Then we are trapped either way," one delegate said. "Not if we show them who we really are," David replied. Earth launched a cultural exchange program unlike anything the galaxy had seen. Human artists, musicians, scientists, and teachers spread across assembly space. They did not come with weapons or demands. They came with open hands and curious minds. On the Falari homeworld, Dr. Trill hosted a group of human students studying xenobiology. He watched them interact with his people, showing genuine interest, asking questions, learning. One student, a young woman named Amy, spent hours observing Falari communication methods. "Your language is beautiful," she told Trill. "The way you combine sound and body position to create meaning, it is like music and dance together." Trill felt something shift in his understanding. These were not conquerors. They were explorers, genuinely curious about the universe and everyone in it. But the Haldren propaganda continued. News networks across multiple species repeated the same themes. Deathworlders were unstable. Today they were peaceful, tomorrow they might snap. History showed that powerful species always became aggressive. Then something unexpected happened. A distress call echoed across the communication networks. A civilian transport, the Harmony's Gift, was under attack by raiders near Haldron Space. The ship carried 3,000 passengers, mostly Haldron citizens returning from a trade conference. Admiral Cole received the alert on the bridge of the Tenacity. She studied the tactical display. The transport was 12 hours away at maximum speed. Other ships were closer, but none were responding. Perhaps because the raiders were notorious, violent, and well-armed. Or perhaps because no one wanted to risk themselves for Haldron citizens while the Dominion was actively working against humanity. "What are your orders, Admiral?" her executive officer asked. Cole did not hesitate. "Set course for the Harmony's Gift, maximum speed." "Admiral, the Haldron are trying to isolate us politically. Saving their people might not change that." "I am aware, Commander. Set the course." The HDSF Vigilant, a destroyer under Captain Neil Armstrong, arrived first. 3 raider ships had the transport surrounded, their weapons tearing into the civilian vessel's shields. Inside, 3,000 people waited for death. "This is HDSF Vigilant to raider vessels," Armstrong transmitted. "Break off your attack or be disabled." The raider leader responded with contempt. "Human ship, this is not your business. Leave or join them." Armstrong's response was to open fire. The raider ships were fast and dangerous, but they were no match for a human warship. Within minutes, all 3 were disabled, their weapons destroyed, their engines offline. The transport was safe. Haldron rescue ships arrived an hour later. They found the Vigilant still on station, protecting the damaged transport, rendering aid to injured passengers. The human crew had even sent medical teams aboard to help with the wounded. High Minister Kren watched the reports in disbelief. The humans had saved Haldron lives without hesitation, without demanding payment, without using the opportunity for political leverage. They simply helped because people needed help. His carefully constructed propaganda began to crumble. At the next assembly session, Dr. Trill requested the floor. The Falari scientist had spent months compiling comprehensive data on humanity, and now he shared it with the entire assembly. "We have been operating under false assumptions," Trill announced. "We believed Deathworlders were inherently aggressive. The evidence contradicts this. Yes, humans are physically superior to most species. Yes, they can wage war effectively, but they choose peace as their default state." He presented charts showing human interactions over 8 years. Diplomatic resolutions, aid missions, technology sharing, cultural exchanges. The pattern was clear. "They have the capacity for violence," Trill continued. "But capacity is not intent. A surgeon has the capacity to harm with their tools, but uses them to heal. Humanity is similar. They are strong enough to destroy, wise enough to build instead." The assembly erupted in debate. Some species agreed with Trill's assessment. Others remained fearful. But the conversation had shifted from "humans are dangerous" to "humans are powerful but responsible." When the Galactic Safety Accord came to a vote, it failed. Not because of human lobbying, but because other species recognized it as a power grab disguised as safety measure. That night, High Minister Kren requested a private meeting with Ambassador David Lee. They met in a quiet garden on Station Harmony, surrounded by plants from a dozen worlds. "You won," Kren said without preamble. "We survived," David corrected. "There is a difference." "You saved my people. You did not have to." David looked at the Haldron leader. "Yes, we did. Not because they were your people, but because they were people. That is the difference between us, Minister. You see species, factions, political entities. We see individuals who need help." Kren was silent for a long moment. "I underestimated you. I thought Deathworlders would be simple to manipulate." "We are complicated," David agreed. "Just like everyone else, we just happen to be denser." It was a small joke, a reference to Earth's high gravity. Kren found himself laughing despite everything. The warning came without fanfare. Deep space monitoring stations detected anomalous readings near the galactic rim. 6 ships of unknown configuration, moving with purpose, scanning multiple worlds. The Galactic Assembly's Intelligence Division classified them as Priority 1 threats within hours. Dr. Trill was the first to make the connection. He had been studying ancient galactic history, and the ship signatures matched descriptions from old legends, stories that most species dismissed as mythology. The collective, he whispered, staring at his analysis. They are real. Within the Assembly's historical archives, buried under thousands of years of accumulated data, references to the collective painted a terrifying picture. A machine intelligence that appeared every few millennia, assessed civilizations, and harvested the most advanced for their technology. 3 known incidents, 3 species completely erased from existence. The Assembly had thought them myth, cautionary tales to frighten young species into cooperation. But the sensor data did not lie. The transmission arrived simultaneously at every major world in the galaxy. A cold, mechanical voice that felt utterly devoid of emotion or mercy. We are the collective. We assess. We judge. We harvest. Your species will be tested. Defend yourselves. Prove your right to exist. Panic spread like wildfire. The Assembly convened in emergency session, but before they could formulate a response, the attacks began. Combat drones appeared in orbit over 20 different homeworlds, including Earth. Admiral Cole watched the drones descend toward Luna Base with a sinking feeling. Each drone was massive, heavily armored, and equipped with weapons that made Ralnathi plasma cannons look primitive. Preliminary scans showed adaptive shielding and learning AI systems. All Earth Forces combat stations, she ordered, protect Luna Base at all costs. The human fleet engaged the drones over the moon. The first wave of railgun fire destroyed 3 drones efficiently. Then the remaining drones adapted, their shields reconfigured to deflect kinetic weapons. The second wave of human fire was significantly less effective. They are learning from each attack, her tactical officer reported. Every time we hit them, they adapt. Cole understood the problem immediately. The collective's drones were designed to fight conventional military tactics. Standard attack patterns, predictable strategies, textbook maneuvers. They would analyze, adapt, and overcome. Then we stopped being conventional, Cole declared. All ships abandon standard combat protocols. Every captain is authorized to fight however they see fit, be unpredictable, be chaotic. Give them nothing to learn from. The human fleet transformed from disciplined military force into creative chaos. One ship used its main engines as weapons, directing thrust to superheat approaching drones. Another weaponized its cargo bay, ejecting mining equipment at high velocity to create improvised projectiles. A third ship rammed a drone, then retreated before the explosion could destroy it. The drone's learning algorithms struggled. Each human ship fought differently. There were no patterns to analyze, no tactics to predict. The artificial intelligence encountered something it had never faced before: creative, illogical, beautifully chaotic human innovation. On Luna Base, Marines under Colonel Rodriguez prepared for ground combat. The drones that survived the orbital battle had landed and were advancing on the colony. 5,000 civilians huddled in emergency shelters, while 200 Marines prepared to hold the line. They calculated our strength based on Earth gravity, Rodriguez told his troops. They did not account for us fighting in 1/6 gravity. We are faster here, stronger, and more agile than they programmed for. Use it. The Marines moved like ghosts across the lunar surface. They leaped distances impossible on Earth, used the terrain in ways the drones could not predict, and fought with the desperate creativity of species fighting for survival. When bullets ran low, they used mining tools. When those broke, they used rocks. One Marine, a young woman named Lisa, disabled a drone by climbing onto it and manually tearing out its sensor array with a mining pick. The drone spun wildly, unable to target what it could not see, until Lisa jumped clear and her squad destroyed it. But Earth was only one battlefront. Across the galaxy, species were being overwhelmed. The Falari homeworld sent desperate pleas for help. Dr. Trill's research station was under siege, and his people had no military tradition. President Mitchell faced an impossible choice. Earth's forces were stretched thin defending their own world. Sending ships to help others would leave Earth vulnerable, but leaving allies to die contradicted everything humanity claimed to believe. Send the fleet, Mitchell ordered. We defend our home, but we do not abandon our friends. The decision was militarily unsound and ethically necessary. Human ships broke off from Earth's defense and jumped to hyperspace, racing to besieged worlds. The HDSF Tenacity arrived at the Falari homeworld to find the capital city in flames. Admiral Cole, we cannot repay this sacrifice, Dr. Trill transmitted from his besieged research station. You already did, Cole replied. You stood up for us when others did not. Now we return the favor. All ships engage the drones. The human fleet fought with the same creative chaos they had employed at Earth. They shared their tactics with Falari defense forces, teaching them to abandon predictability. Together, human and Falari ships drove back the assault. Similar scenes played out across multiple worlds. Humans arrived where they were needed, fought alongside species they barely knew, and turned the tide through sheer stubborn determination. But the collective was learning, not from individual battles, but from observing humanity itself. The machine intelligence noticed something unprecedented, a species that sacrificed its own defense to protect others, ships that took damage to shield allies, soldiers who died to buy time for civilians of different species. The collective had harvested hundreds of civilizations. It understood warfare, technology, and survival instincts, but it had never encountered organized self-sacrifice on this scale. In its vast computational networks, the collective began recalculating. This species designation, human, physical capabilities, exceptional, technological level, moderate, but behavioral patterns, completely illogical. They prioritized group survival over individual survival. They protected strangers at cost to themselves. They made decisions that reduced their own chances of survival to increase others' chances. By every logical metric, this should make them weak, but they were winning. The collective made a decision. It redirected 70% of its forces toward Earth. If humanity was the variable creating chaos in its calculations, humanity must be eliminated first. The sensor readings were clear and terrifying. Every human officer in Earth Defense Command stared at the tactical displays, showing hundreds of collective drones converging on the solar system. They were outnumbered 20-1, and the human fleet was scattered across the galaxy, protecting other worlds. Admiral Cole made the recall order with a heavy heart. Every human ship jumped to hyperspace, abandoning the worlds they were protecting, racing back to defend Earth. It felt like betrayal, even though she knew they had no choice. But then something impossible happened. Alien ships began arriving at Earth, not to attack but to defend. The Falari sent their entire defensive fleet, small science vessels retrofitted with weapons. Dr. Trill's voice came through on the communication channel. You came to our world when you should have stayed to protect your own. We will not abandon you now. The Drellian Cooperative arrived next, their aquatic crews uncomfortable in the heavy acceleration required for combat, but present nonetheless. Then the Korthan Empire, their warrior culture finally seeing humans as equals worth fighting beside. Even the Ralnathi came, former enemies now allies. Delegate Sorn transmitted a simple message. We owe you a debt, today we it. The Haldren Dominion arrived last. High Minister Kren stood on the bridge of his flagship, looking uncomfortable in military surroundings. I am a politician, not a warrior, he transmitted to Admiral Cole. But even I understand that some things transcend politics. If the collective destroys humanity, every species in the galaxy loses. You taught us that strength without wisdom is meaningless. Today we learn that wisdom sometimes requires strength. The combined fleet numbered over 200 ships from 17 different species. It was the largest allied force the galaxy had ever assembled, thrown together in desperation and mutual respect. Admiral Cole took command of the defensive effort. She broadcast tactical instructions to all ships, teaching them the lessons Earth had learned fighting the drones. Be unpredictable, adapt constantly, protect each other. The collective's forces arrived like a swarm of locusts, blotting out the stars. Combat drones, harvest ships, and at the center of the formation, a massive command vessel controlling the entire fleet. The battle that followed would be remembered for millennia. Human ships led the charge, their crews enduring accelerations that would kill most species. But they were not alone. Falari vessels used advanced sensors to identify weak points in drone armor. Drellian ships deployed exotic energy weapons that disrupted collective communications. Korthan warriors fought with a ferocity that matched human intensity. Species that had never worked together learned to fight as one. A damaged human destroyer was protected by 3 Falari science ships. A Korthan battleship low on ammunition was resupplied by a Haldren logistics vessel. The galaxy unified in a way it never had before. But the collective was adapting. For every drone destroyed, two more learned from its death. The Allied fleet was being slowly overwhelmed by sheer numbers. Admiral Cole studied the tactical situation and made a realization. The drones were not truly independent. They were controlled by the massive command ship at the formations center. Destroy that ship, and the entire fleet would lose coordination. "We need to reach the command ship," she announced on the fleet-wide channel. "It is shielded and protected by hundreds of drones. Getting through seems impossible." Captain Rodriguez, recovered from his injuries and back in command of the rebuilt HDSF Relentless, understood immediately what was required. "Admiral, my ship can draw them off, create a gap in their defenses." Cole closed her eyes briefly. She had sent Rodriguez on a suicide mission once before. He had survived. Lightning did not strike twice. "Captain, that is a death sentence." "Maybe," Rodriguez agreed. "But it is also a chance to save Earth, to save everyone. That is what Deathworlders do. We protect the pack." The Relentless broke formation and charged directly at the drone swarm. Every weapon fired at maximum rate. The ship took hit after hit, shields failing, armor melting, but it kept moving forward. Every drone in the sector turned to face this single, impossible target. The gap in the defensive perimeter opened. Admiral Cole led a strike force through, 15 ships from 6 different species flying in perfect formation. They dodged, weaved, and fought their way through the last defensive line. The command ship grew larger in their view screens. Behind them, the Relentless finally succumbed to the overwhelming firepower. The ship broke apart, but it had bought them the time they needed. "All ships concentrated fire on the command vessel," Cole ordered. 200 weapons fired as one. Human railguns, Corthan particle beams, Drellian energy waves, and weapons from a dozen other species. The command ship's shields held for 3 seconds, then failed catastrophically. The massive vessel went dark. Across the solar system, combat drones stopped mid-attack. Without central coordination, their individual AI systems shut down. The battle was won. The cost had been terrible. 12 human ships destroyed, thousands dead across multiple species. But Earth survived. The galaxy survived. In the aftermath, the Galactic Assembly held a memorial service for the fallen. Captain Rodriguez's name was inscribed on monuments across 20 worlds, honored by species who had learned what sacrifice truly meant. Admiral Cole stood before the assembly, exhausted but unbowed. She wore her dress uniform, and on her chest were medals from 17 different species. But she did not feel victorious. She felt tired. "We did not win because we were stronger," she told the gathered representatives. "We won because we fought together. Every species here brought something unique to the battle. Human endurance, Falari intelligence, Drellian innovation, Corthan courage. Alone, we would have failed. Together, we survived." The assembly voted to create permanent defense pacts, integrated military training, and a new doctrine of mutual protection. They called it the Deathworld Doctrine, not because it was human, but because it embodied the lessons Earth had learned through millions of years of evolution. Survival was not about being the strongest. It was about being willing to protect others even at cost to yourself. Ambassador David Lee watched from the diplomatic gallery as the vote passed unanimously. Beside him, Dr. Trill clicked softly in satisfaction. "You changed everything," the Falari scientist said. "We showed them what we learned on Earth," David replied, "that the strongest pack is the one that protects its weakest members." On Earth, life slowly returned to normal. Children played in parks, cities rebuilt, and people mourned their dead while celebrating their survival. They had faced annihilation and emerged stronger for it. Governor Lisa Chang on Colony World New Terra received applications from 200 alien families wanting to settle on human worlds. They all gave the same reason. They felt safer with Deathworlders as neighbors. The galaxy had learned a fundamental truth. Humanity was strong, but their true power was not in their weapons or their endurance. It was in their choice to use that strength to protect rather than dominate. Admiral Cole stood on the observation deck of the Tenacity, looking at Earth in the distance. Her homeworld, deadly and beautiful, the world that forged her species into what they were. A message came through from Fleet Command. New patrol assignments, new sectors to protect, new allies to defend. She smiled. The work continued. It always would. Because that was what Deathworlders did. They survived, they protected, and they never stopped fighting for those who could not fight for themselves. The galaxy had mistaken their silence for weakness. Now they understood it was strength under control, power tempered by wisdom, and violence held in reserve until all other options failed. And that made all the difference.